Okay, so my section here is really just about a few little updates. It's not going to take me very long. I feel like the executive officers covered a lot of it or touched on a lot of it, but I wanted to talk a little bit about articulation agreements. Of course, you know that these are agreements between either the high school and us, or another university or college and us. But I want to specifically talk about high school articulations. There's an agency now that is it's really a combination of TEA and THECB, both for high school and for college, and they've gotten a lot more particular about what they're expecting with articulation agreements. So this really probably applies to chairs or program coordinators more than anybody else, that one of the things they're going to ask for is that the high school instructors need to be qualified according to our standards to teach those articulated courses. That makes a huge difference in what we're doing now. So if you do have articulation agreements with high schools in your area, please go back and take a look, and we're going to have to gather that information from the high school. And you can see, I think Janelle Deal put out a process that when you are talking to high schools about articulating courses, that you're going to have to ask for certain information before you go forward. And when you do an articulation and you are making that agreement, any notes and anything that you decide along with the articulation agreement, all of that should be in your file at the department. Keep a record of that. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was we went out to Lampasas. Some people went to Lampasas and some people went to the KISD Career Center, and we did talk about articulation agreements with Lampasas ISD and KISD. And I know it's been almost a year since we've been to Lampasas. I did send an email out about that, and I did hear back from a lot of people about what has happened, why nothing has gone forward. But I have to say that Lampasas ISD has a lot of 4-years panting at their door. They want to come in, they offer stuff free. I mean, they've tried again and again to come in, and they tried to offer an engineering courses there, and Sam and Deborah were right on it, like, oh, no, you don't. They went out there and stopped it. So we do have people that want to come in and do articulated courses with them, and so we want to maintain that contact and make sure that there's some kind of action going forward. If you went out and talked to the teachers and you've hit some kind of wall, there's some kind of obstacle, then let me know. I can get involved, and we need to try to move it forward so that Lampasas doesn't think, well, I haven't heard anything, so let me go with this other school. Same with KISD Career Center. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about new programs. I mean, in terms of new programs and new certificates this past year, and I don't think I even remembered them all. I tried to remember them all. You all get an A++++++. We have had a lot of new development, and so I just think we've done an awesome job adding to our curriculum. We have a certificate of completion in cyber defense. We added an associate degree in computer science. We added an applied Associate of Applied Science in Fire Science Administration, and I have to say that one was approved by the state, and now that's the substantive change that John wrote, and we sent that off in December. That was one of the ones that Dr. Garrett was talking about because we worked up to the very last minute. If you didn't see me at the service awards, and you didn't see me at the nursing pinning, and you didn't see me at the Festival of Trees, and you didn't see me to everything else I was supposed to be, I was working on the substantive reports trying to make the deadline because I had to be there when the doors open in January 1. So anyway, I didn't miss them on purpose. I was just trying to get stuff done. We also have an associate in applied science, and I think we're starting with the certificate in logistics specialist. That's been approved by the state. We have an IT network analyst a certificate of completion, human resources management. You can see phlebotomy technician, histology. We had this past year, right, Marvin? Was it this year we got histology or the year before? We got approval this year. Of 16, that we initiated it, or did we start it?
We started last.
Oh, okay, so it was 2 years ago, okay. Community health worker, entry-level electronics technician, electronic instruments technician, business management supervision, business management entrepreneurship, and business management. So, I mean, that's a lot. Did I forget anything? Oh, the digital media. Sorry, Max. Yeah, I knew about that. Digital media. So, yeah, I'm an associate of applied science. Any others? That's a lot. That is a lot. So I think that's great. Good job. So Dr. Garrett talked a little bit about the issue with OERs and what's coming. I will say that a lot of publishers are getting on board with that. Cengage really has 2 new products, and I'm sure that the other publishers have something equivalent. It's just I happened to have a meeting recently with Cengage, so I'm not promoting just Cengage. We need to check with everybody. But they know that everybody's moving in the direction of OERs. They have a lot available on that. Cengage has started this one subscription-based for digital products, which is $119.99 a semester. The students can print it for $7.99, which is just the cost of printing, but that gives them access to every digital product that they have, which I think is a good deal. And they also have a new project called Open Now, and they're coming down to demo this for us on January 17th. And it is basically OER courses that are already developed in a variety of subjects. I think they have 12 disciplines that they've developed courses for that are already online access courses without an actual textbook. So we're going to check it out, and we'll share it with you. But this is the direction we're definitely moving, and all the publishers are moving in too. Of course, we still need to drill down on costs, which is the reason for the OERs. There are a lot of departments that made huge changes and reduced the costs of their texts. There are other departments, some for very legitimate reasons, that you pick it up and it's still $350 worth of text. So that's something that we do need to look at and we need to work on. I also need to tell you that new book adoption dates have changed. If you try to change your book in August now, probably Stephanie will not accept that in her department, because that is a problem for a lot of our overseas sites. By the time everything gets implemented and through all the proper channels, it really needs to be July. And then if you can't make July, you can try to implement a new book in October. But August as a big startup date around the world, we're just not getting that book change out there fast enough, and it's just messing a lot of people up. So we're asking for these other 2 dates now. And I think that there's a new process that's going to be coming down in writing about book adoption. I wrote it up, I sent it to the deputy chancellors, and as soon as they approve it and finalize it, that'll be coming out.
Jan?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point. All I can tell you, well, I can give you the party line, or I can give you my honest answer. I don't think that the 2 sides of the house, the business side of the house and the operational side of the house, are in agreement about how to proceed. I think as long as we were still down and we were not breaking even, I think that they were afraid to do away with the bookstore revenue. So that point, which has been brought up many, many times in a lot of meetings, was not acted upon because they needed the revenue. That's a major revenue source. But as we progress and make more progress, turning ourselves around, I think that that's an agreement that's going to have to be made between the operational side of the house and the financial side of the house, and it's a decision way above me. I'll put it that way. Yep, it is. Yep. It is. Plus, we have to now put out something to the students where they can, something on our campus, something on our website where they can search for a cheapest book, and it may not lead them to our bookstore. Yeah, so that's all I know to tell you right now, Sandy. Yeah.
The adoption.
I think when we were talking about this, we were talking about an entire new book, but let me check on that, because the problem is by the time everything filters through all the departments that it needs to and it gets out, it's too late. People have already bought a book in Europe, and now things are really messed up. So let me check on that. That's a good question. Okay. One of the things that we've done, and we've done it really as part of starting down pathways, is we're trying to do a series of instructional videos for students because we feel that they don't read narratives so much. And so, and I don't either, to tell you the truth. I mean, I'm really bad about just wanting to skim through stuff, and I don't read stuff real well, especially when I'm looking on the website. So what they're trying to do is they're doing a bunch of instructional videos. They'll be on registration, student planning, on admissions, on financial aid, and like the steps that they should be taking, and they can be watching somebody talking them through the process. Yes?
One of the things that we've noticed as far as fine arts over at the early part of the early college high school is a lack of knowledge on how to connect Web Advisor and Blackboard. Is there any way that could be added into these instructional videos to give that a little bit more support over across the street?
Sure, because they're just in the process of making these now. KNCT was nice enough to take this on, and I just wanted to show you their first one they did on student life, because I think they're pretty good. So this one is just telling them, if I can get it up, telling them about student life.
When I enrolled at Central Texas College, I was worried about my classes, meeting new people, and what to expect. The tour of the campus with a student ambassador was pretty cool. He made me feel really comfortable, and he had all the right answers. New student orientation helped out a lot. I received information about the rules and guidelines on campus and how they apply to me. I was able to ask questions about things I wasn't sure about, and I felt more prepared for life as a CTC student. They told me about student life. It's the best thing ever. I can relax and have fun, hang out with other students like me. I met people from other backgrounds and made connections that I never thought were possible. Student life also connected me to campus clubs and organizations. I joined a club and found out it was a great way to have fun and make a difference on campus and in the community. College can be stressful, and forming new relationships can be hard. Student life helped me to grow as an individual and make connections and memories that will last a lifetime.
did a good job. That was the first one that they did. So, we're thinking that if these are on our website and they're going to be seen where they can actually pick what they want to go into, they can pick going into registration, and somebody will talk them through the steps of registration. Somebody will talk them through the application process in a separate one on admissions. We think that that's going to help clarify a lot. But you know, your point about early college high school is it's not just early college high school, it's just a lot of students. Kirsten and I see a lot of people on appeals and, you know, suspension, probation. I would say the majority of them know what a GPA is, but they have no idea how to calculate one or how anybody got to that number. There's probably a percentage of them that don't have any idea what a GPA is. They don't have any idea why they're on suspension. They really are missing some basic knowledge. We thought it was interesting with early college high school that there was a panic because they did not know. They thought that 60, they knew about 60 being an passing unsatisfactorily. That's the way it's defined in our catalog. But they did not know that 1301 requires a 70 before you go into 1302. So they were really missing some basic facts about things. And because we're thinking that they know that, we may or may not mention it. If we mention it, okay, we're in sync, we're on the same page. If we don't mention it and they don't mention it, we don't know that they don't know. And then we had an issue on that this semester. So there's just a lot of basic knowledge I think that we need to brief all students on, and hopefully this will solve those problems. Another thing that we're moving toward, and again, this is part of the Pathways thing, is we're moving toward some more structured professional development, a series of classes. Now, does that mean you're going to be bogged with a lot more work that you're going to have to do on your own? We hope not. We hope that because we're doing 2 in-services a year now, we're hoping, and they're both 2 days, we're hoping that we can take our second day of in-service and work on classes that will be credited toward what we're calling an instructor academy, and that at so many hours of class, there'll be levels of incentive. Will the incentive be cash? No. I'll tell you that right now because I already made that argument and I didn't win. But it will be other incentives that I think that you will like. And I think there will be probably 2 what they call they're medals, I guess, that come on a ribbon. I don't know if you've ever seen the ones that are given out at A&M. They're really, really beautiful. And I think that we'll probably have 2 to award the people that do the most professional development and have the most hours in the classes. Some of the classes will be for online courses. Some of the classes will be for face-to-face courses. We'll be covering stuff like flipping the class, working on some of the stuff that Pathways wants us to work on. But to me, if we're required to do 2 hours of 2 days of pre-service, and we're doing it twice a year, we can make part of that a working section, kind of like the Pathways breakouts would be tomorrow afternoon. So. I think it's a good thing, and I think you'll enjoy it. I believe that's all I've got. Any questions for me? Do you know what I do? Do you know what a dean does? Does everybody have a pretty good idea about that? Because I remember when Don Michaels was a dean and I was a chair, I really didn't know what Don Michaels did. I knew some of what he did. I didn't know all of what he did. But it was a real eye-opener to me when I stepped into the dean's position. So if you haven't worked with me personally on solving issues, I mean, really what our office does, all of us in our office, is we pretty much are problem solvers. That's what we do. When there are things that can't be solved at your level, then you raise it to me and we try to solve it. And sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not, but we do our best to try to support you And I just want you to know we're here. You can always come see us. And if you have an issue, just call or come to the office. We're happy to see you. Our guest speaker is here. We're a little bit early. Nicole, you want to introduce our guest?
Everybody. My name is Nicole Goldsworthy. I'm the Perkins Grant Coordinator, and so we're excited that Perkins was able to fund our guest speaker's appearance today. Mr. Brooks Harper is the premier college and career readiness and soft skills speaker in America. He provides keynotes, workshops, and training material for students and professionals, helping them discover, develop, and market and sell their talents. Skills, abilities that bring tangible value to the marketplace. Through his speaking engagements and book, entitled Why Should We Hire You, which, by the way, is available for sale out in the vestibule. They're $10 a piece, and he will autograph them for you as well. Shows job seekers how to tell their story and communicate their value to the workplace. His book has been incorporated in many economics, business, and career services curricula as the go-to textbook for teaching interview skills, self-marketing, and personal branding. He connects the dots between today's decisions and tomorrow's college and career options. Brooks draws from 15 years of leadership experience in corporate America to invest and inspire our current and future workforce. Years before he became an author and one of the most sought-after career speakers in the country, he worked in customer service, sales, management with 4 publicly traded companies. Dr. Hackett tells me she attended his speaking conference, or the conference at National Council for Technical Education, and found his insight and advice to job seekers and educators informative and applicable to today's job market. So please welcome Mr. Brooks Harper.
All right, let's start like this. I'm going to give you a slogan. You give me the brand associated with the slogan. You guys ready? If you're ready, say, I'm ready. I'm ready. Just do it. I'm loving it. Eat fresh. Taste the rainbow, fruit flavors. Silly rabbit. Yes, they are. This is for ladies only. Ladies only. Built tough. Very good. Now, fellas, don't let us down. Easy, breezy, beautiful. Come on, girl. Good job. Complete this. Nationwide. It's on your side. Like a good neighbor. We are farmers. Red Robin. Y'all watching too much television. Hey, here's one. Here's one for students of the real world. That's right. That's a good one. Let me give you mine. You can adopt them if you like. There are 2. Turn learning into earning and your passion into your paycheck. That's where you take what you know and what you love, you put it together and get paid. How many of you like to get paid? I'm talking to the right group. Good. How many of you know someone who has a job but can't stand it? You're here to complain about their job. No one in here, but you know someone. I can relate to that. I was in the business for a number of years. I made good money. I bought my house, my cars. And then all of a sudden, I knew something was wrong. I figured out I didn't like my job. This is how I knew it. Every Sunday at 4 o'clock, I get this sick feeling in my chest. Man, I'm thinking I'm having a heart attack. I need a cardiologist. And that wasn't the case. I had anxiety. I didn't want to go to work on Monday. I want a vacation. Take me 5 days of the vacation I paid for to turn that job off in my brain, to mentally clock out and begin to enjoy the sand between my toes. And life's too short for that. And here's what I found in retrospect. Oftentimes, it's the lens by which we view what we do that makes the difference. It's that perspective. And I had something happen to me after I landed in Austin Sunday night. I got to my hotel, and the next morning I woke up early and I went down to get a cup of coffee and banana around 6. Well, the bananas weren't out, and that's unheard of at a Hampton Inn. They always have bananas. So I settled for something else, went back up, got some thoughts together, got ready, and I came down around 8:30, and there were the bananas. And then I figured out why they weren't ready when I got there. It's because of Donna. Donna gets the breakfast ready at Hampton Inn in Temple, Texas every morning. Now, what I wasn't prepared for were the notes on the bananas. Each morning she takes a little bit extra time to write down notes of encouragement for the guests who stay there because she looks at them as her guests. And so this morning, I went back to the hotel to stay there because I thought so much of Donna, and I wanted to get my banana again for this morning. And this morning, I think she had this one set out just for me, be a voice, not an echo. And I like that. But I think she embodies what we're talking about when we talk about being passionate about what you do and really appreciating the opportunities that every day present to us. And now more than ever, with the landscape of the workforce, I get a chance to crisscross the country speaking in middle schools, high schools, colleges, and corporations. And I have good news to report to you. This is still America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Now what that means for you, for me, for us, our students, they do have unlimited opportunities, but they face unprecedented competition. They tell us right now the country of India has more honor students than America actually has students. And students will push back on me on that stat. They'll say, man, that's India. What's that got to do with me? That's a long way away from here, and that is true. But we know the world's gotten smaller. All you have to do is point them toward the National Basketball Association. They only have 500 players in the league, and did you know now over 100 of those players represent 40 different countries across the globe, and that number's increasing? Your San Antonio Spurs, one of the most diverse basketball teams in the entire NBA. And so we're not just seeing that level of competition in athletics, but in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, all career clusters. And so we got to get them ready. I heard that just about 85% of college graduates last year had to move back in with their parents after graduation. They're calling them the boomerang generation. Well, you know what a boomerang does when you throw it. That's right back. What do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back? A stick or a frisbee? And that's what we want them to do, go somewhere and stick. And I come across a wide range of students, I'm sure you do as well. Some students we have to pull back down from the clouds. You've met these. I did a career presentation one time for some students, and I asked the student, what do you think of my presentation? He said, man, that's cool, but I don't need it. I said, why do you say that? He said, because I'm going to be an engineer. I said, that's cool, man. Let me ask you a question. When you graduate from college with the engineering degree, you go to interview with a company, the last question we ask in every interview is, why should we hire you? And if you don't have a good story to tell, you're going to be OTD. He said, what's that? I said, out the door. And you know what they tell you on the way out the door? Hey, thanks for coming in today. We're going to hold on to your resume. We will call you. The translation is, you will never hear from us again. They get one shot. And so we have that student, but you know what I'm finding more and more? Students I'm having to pick up off the floor. And I think I heard some testimonies just a minute ago from some of the students you're coming in contact with. I had a student call me and say, hey man, can you help me find a job? I said, well, let's start with why you don't have one. And he said, because I'm slow. I said, what you mean you slow? You slow moving or slow thinking? He said, both. And I'm on the phone with this guy for a few minutes. Guess what he's been told since he was a kid this high? He's been told he's slow. This guy's so honest, one of the first things out of his mouth when he gets into an interview is he goes ahead and tells them, hey, I just want to let you know I'm slow. And no one's hiring him. I said, well, first of all, you're never going to say that again. We're going to get that program out. My brother, I said, you're not slow, you learn differently. My little brother's one of the finest auto technicians in the state of South Carolina. He has a learning disability. And here's what I'm saying. All of our students have value. And I remember a kid, I heard a story about a guy, he wanted to be a deputy sheriff all his life. He went after it with persistence, finally gets in front of the sheriff, and the sheriff asked him a series of questions. And the first interview question he asked was, what's 1 and 1? And the kid said, 11. Well, the sheriff had to think about it. He said, you know, he's not exactly wrong. Because if you put a 1 and a 1 together, what do you have? An 11. And he said, we need people in this department who can look at a crime scene differently. We may have someone here. Second question. What 2 days of the week start with the letter T? The kid said, today and tomorrow. Question 3. Who assassinated Abraham Lincoln? The kid scratched his head. He doesn't know. He said, Sheriff, I don't know. He said, well, work on it. He said, yes, sir. He gets up, runs out of the sheriff's department, skips across the street to the barber shop where his buddies are getting their hair cut, and he busts in the door, and they said, how did the interview go? He said, great, you're not going to believe this. First day on the job, I'm on a murder case. So we call that the gap. Sometimes there's a gap between where they are and where they think they are, and without pouring ice water on their dreams, we kind of close that gap for them, but also showing them how the possibilities and their potential can really end up with a career that they can be passionate about. How many of you ever get stressed out? Okay, yeah, I can appreciate that. How many of you ever had a night where you kind of stayed up all night, you lost some sleep, you were worried about something that's going to happen the next day, and the very thing you worried about either didn't take place or wasn't near as bad as you thought it would be? Can I see your hands? They say 90% of the things we worry about actually never take place. And so people say, see, worry works. The more I worry about it, the less likely it is to happen. But the truth is, worry doesn't work. Let me see. Can you relate to this? One more form? What about this? Sometimes you don't see the light of day. You get here when it's dark, you leave here it's dark. This is my personal favorite. I got a slogan I use. Don't sweat the petty or pet the sweaty. And the petty are those little things that really probably don't matter, that we're worried about, that we have no control over. And the sweaty are the people who want you to stress those things. Because stress can really affect us. They say worry is a dark room where negatives are developed. They say that worry and stress have been linked to arthritis, all kind of health problems, heart problems. I saw this play out in my own home. My daughter, when she was 12, was diagnosed with alopecia areata. Anyone know what that is? It's where your white blood cells attack your hair follicles. And when she was 12 years old, she lost every hair on her head, eyebrows, eyelashes, arms. It was gone. And I got her to the dermatologist, and he diagnosed her. And I said, well, how did she get this? He said, sir, she was born with it. I said, well, how come it only showed up when she was 12? He said, she's probably stressed out. And I said, wait a second, what does a beautiful girl who's smart, gets along with most people, have to be stressed about? Apparently a lot. What I didn't know is I'm crisscrossing the country speaking in high schools, colleges, middle schools, and in my own backyard, my wife is dropping my daughter off at the middle school. She's in 7th grade every day. There's 2 8th grade girls giving her a hard time. And my daughter's like this. If there's 40 people in the room and 38 of those people like her, she will spend all her energy trying to convince the other 2 while she's okay. And then sometimes people aren't going to like you, but here's what happened. She internalized it. We all have a threshold, and all of our bodies reacted differently to stress. And finally, hers hit that threshold, and her hair fell out, and she went completely bald. And sometimes the things we worry about, we have no control over. You think about all the things, this is Carnegie that said this, that life's kind of like an hourglass, that this sand has to pass through the canal evenly. If you try to force more sand that can go through that little canal and just push it through, you run the risk of damaging the very structure of the hourglass, where our bodies are like that. We start out with this day with all these things we have to accomplish. The truth is, we can only do one thing at a time. Some people don't believe that. They say, well, I'm a multitasker. Well, just a fundamental tenet in psychology, you can't think about more than one thing at a time. I'll prove it to you. You got to trust me. Close your eyes real quick. I want you to visualize the Statue of Liberty and what you're eating for dinner tonight. Open your eyes. You can't do it simultaneously. Some people were visualizing themselves eating dinner at the Statue of Liberty. Where are you? You'll burn out, man. Don't do that. One thing at a time. Hey, do this for me. Where you sit, lift your left foot, okay, and turn the foot clockwise continuously. You doing it? And then write the number 6 and watch your foot go the other way. Because you can't think about more than one thing at a time. My kids know this. My kids know if they don't have my undivided attention, then I probably do not hear a word they say. And this has been used against me. I know of a time where my wife's called, and I'm like this at the laptop. As soon as I think I know where the conversation's going, you kind of go back to the laptop, fellas, you with me? And then all of a sudden you hear a very terrifying question. What do you think? You got 2 choices. You can say, can you repeat that? Or you roll the dice. And most of us roll the dice. We say, well, whatever you think, honey. And you come home, there's a new car in your driveway, right? With a payment plan that you're paying for. So we can only do one thing at a time. At the slope of Long's Peak in Colorado, they tell us there's a rung of a tree, and the tree stood there for 400 years. Scientists say it was struck by lightning 14 times. Innumerable avalanches went by it. When Columbus hit San Salvador, this tree was a seed. When the Pilgrims hit Plymouth Rock, it was 200 years old. For 400 years, this tree stood the test of time, and now there's nothing left of it. Because one day a beetle ate through the bark and took his buddies with him and ate that tree up from the inside out. The very thing that stood the test of time for years, yet was destroyed by a bug that you could squish with your fingers. I'm encouraging you today not to sweat the petty. Don't pet the sweaty. Have you ever met a negative person? Yes. You have? Their face looks like they were weaned on a pickle. Search for negativity as if there was a reward for it. They say there's only 10 negative people in the world, but they move around a lot. So you're bound to bump into one of them, right? So sometimes there's people around you that's just who they are, and then in a nice, kind way, you kind of distance yourself from them. But then you know what can happen? Sometimes you meet people like Donna, who are like life-changing. People ask me about when I got started in the speaking business, and this is how it happened. I went to work for a company called Monster.com, and they had a speaking force. They sent me a 45-minute script, and I'm trying to jam this thing into my head, and they're flying me to Cincinnati to deliver that script in front of people who know exactly what I'm supposed to be saying. It's a lot of pressure. And so I'm in the Columbia airport sitting, and this guy walks by me, and you kind of glance up, and I can tell his face has been burned. And I didn't want to get caught what? Staring. And so I look back down, but they seat this guy right behind me on the plane. And he got the little crack in the seat, and I'm kind of looking through the crack. But I still can't get a good look at the guy. But he's back there having a normal conversation. We land in Atlanta, and I'm going to my connecting flight. And have y'all been in the Atlanta airport? They got these runways, right? The treadmills you can get on. I love those things. We need those at the college, don't we? You can get a lot faster where you're going with those treadmills. But this is the conversation I was having with myself that day. Hey man, if you're going to be a big-time speaker, you got to learn to let the treadmill do its job. I said, that's right. But in Atlanta, if you stop, you might get run over. And so I stood to the side and I turned around to make sure I'm in no one's way, and here comes this guy at me that had the burns. And I panicked, because I had that feeling we're going to have a conversation, and I had no idea what I would say to him. Because the closer he got to me, I got the look I wanted. And I'm telling you, when I tell you this guy was burned, his ears were burned off, his nose, I mean, he was in bad shape. But he walks up to me and he says, how you doing? I said, I'm okay, how are you? He said, fantastic, and I'm improving. I was like, okay. He said, where are you flying? I said, Cincinnati. Where are you flying? He said, San Francisco. He said, now why would you be going to Cincinnati? I said, I'm going to be a speaker. He said, well, that's interesting. That's what I do. He said, I speak all over the world. And it dawned on me what I would say to him. I said, man, I bet you got a story to tell. And he said, yes, I do. But he didn't have time to tell it to me because we had gotten to the end of the treadmill. My plane's this way, his plane's the other way. But he did give me his name, and he reached out to shake my hand. And that's when I noticed for the first time he didn't have any hands. And I shook this little nub he had for a right hand. And when I walked away from that guy, it's changed my life forever. Because here's what I said. I don't have problems. Here's a guy, if he woke up this morning in a bad mood, I would appreciate that. I'd say, this guy's got a reason to be upset. I'm telling you, he's one of the most enthusiastic people that I've ever met in my entire life. When I got to a computer, I Googled his name. 2 million hits on it. And he had a book. Guess what I did that day? I bought the book. Guess what I did the day I bought it? I read it right then. I want to introduce you to my friend, Joel Sonnenberg. In 1979, when he was 2 years old, he was strapped into the car seat of his family's vehicle at a toll booth near Maine, getting ready to enter the state. They're on vacation, and an 18-wheeler would plow into the back of his family's car. Car goes up into the air, lands upside down, and is immediately engulfed in flames. His family is too injured to even rescue him. He's strapped to the car seat, but a guy hears him 3 lanes over screaming, risks his own life to pull Joel from the car. But by the time he got to him, his body had been fused to the plastic in the car seat. 85% of his body had been burned. From what I understand from the record, that no one in 1979 had been burned 85% and lived. Skin pajamas did not even exist yet. But they were able to air vac him to the Boston Burn Center, and the team just went to work on this kid. And he would scream for months. But here's what they would do. The only place on his body that was not burned was his pant where his diaper was and his shoes. They would take the skin from his backside systematically, put it on other parts of his body. He would have to wait for it to heal, and they would do that over and over and over, a very painful surgery. And at age 5, he looked at his doctors and said, no more surgery. He said, if it doesn't help me walk better, talk better, breathe better, I do not care what I look like. I don't want any more surgery. And the first day of school, he couldn't go. They brought in a team of sociologists, psychologists, and showed home videos of him to prepare the other students for his arrival. Guess who the most popular kid in school was? Joe. By 12th grade, senior year, he was a standout soccer player. Guess what you don't need to play soccer? Hands. You know what this guy figured out? My circumstances don't make me who I am. They have revealed who I am as a person. And this guy is such an encouraging person. And now his whole career is helping kids in Florida discover the value that they do have who have been through traumatic things like that. I heard a guy say it like this one time. I was singing the blues because I had no shoes until I met a man on the street who had no feet. And that changed the way I looked at everything. I'm talking to you really about gratitude. Having an attitude of gratitude. See, a passion for what we do begins with an appreciation for what we do. And sometimes we just lose sight of the reason we got into our professions in the first place and just need to take a moment. One of the first things I did with my daughter when her hair fell out, we got home, we got out a sheet of paper and a pen, and we wrote down some things she was thankful for. And we made a little list, and she came up with like 27 things. I think I was number 26 on the list. But I made the list, right? Here's what I want you to do just for a moment. If you got a pen and a piece of paper by you, I want you to just take a moment and write down about 4 or 5 things that you're thankful for. It can be about this job, what's going on at the house, just 4 or 5 things real fast. There was a study done at the University of California in Davis, and they discovered this, scientifically proved. People who take a moment out of their day, throughout the day, to think about the things they're thankful for, reduce the cortisol in their body by 23%, which is the hormone that produces stress. Just being thankful for the things that we do have. They say an ounce of gratitude is worth a pound of cure. You heard that? All right, you got your list? All right. Now I want to tell you why I do what I do. When I was 9 years old, my dad did a Houdini. Y'all know what that is? He disappeared. The problem is he never reappeared. And it would go 30 years would go by before I would have a meaningful conversation with him. And it was my good fortune in my neighborhood, there was a Boys and Girls Club. And I know you have those here in Texas. In fact, I think every military base has a Boys and Girls Club on it. And then there's some that are off base. But I walked into that place when I was 9 years old. It had a gymnasium and a games room. It had pool, ping pong, and foosball. And I was hooked. But that's not why I kept going back. It was the people that were working there making a difference in my life. They were giving me words of affirmation. I was starving for affection. And they were giving that to me, and that's why I just kept going back to them. I could tell they cared about me. And they came to me when I was 12, 13 years old. I'll never forget. They're trying to raise money for the center. And they wanted me to tell my story at a board meeting. And I said, no way. I said, I don't do public speeches. I said, y'all got the wrong guy. I said, get that other guy to do it. And they said, no, you want to come here and continue to come here? Yes, sir. Then you're gonna do the speech. And besides, we're gonna feed you a sausage biscuit from Hardee's. I said, well, what time you gonna pick me up? Because I was a free lunch, free breakfast, hand-me-down clothes wearing kid from the time I was in elementary school till I graduated high school. And they swung by my house at 7 a.m. They took me over to this building in downtown Columbia, and I went up the elevator, and there was this room full of important people. I could tell they were important. They were all dressed professionally. And I looked around that room, and I said this to myself, maybe one day you'll be sitting where they sit. And they had the biscuits over against the wall. I made my way over to the biscuits. And the guy said, what are you doing? I said, I'm getting the biscuit. He said, no. You get the biscuit after you get the presentation. can see them and smell them. We call that incentive. I said, y'all want a presentation? I got up and did my best to tell them what I was doing at the Boys and Girls Club, the difference it was making. And after the presentation, they didn't give me one biscuit. They gave me 2 biscuits. And you know what I wanted to know? When's the next board meeting, right? And by the time I was 15, I was traveling with this organization. And when I was 15, they took us up to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This was like country going to town. It was a group of us to represent our state at this national conference. And I got a picture of us on that trip when I was 15. I'm going to show it to you, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds to find me in this photo. You need more time? I don't know how I just did that. Boy, I could talk a little while just on this photo, but most of us had something in common. We were either being raised by grandparents, single parents, or we were in foster care. And most of us had never been out of our state, much less stayed in a hotel, much less the William Penn Hotel in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And they took us to a nice Italian restaurant, and the only thing we knew about Italian food was pizza and spaghetti. So most of us ordered pizza, with the exception of the fella at the top with his hat tipped up. He's trying to be fancy, and he calls the waiter over. He said, "What's that?" And the waiter says, "Sir, that is linguine." He said, "Well, that's what I want." "Excellent choice, sir." And so they brought us our food. We're all eating our pizza. He hadn't touched his food. In fact, it's beginning to congeal on his plate. And you can tell he's visibly upset. We said, "Man, what's wrong with you?" He said, "I'm going to tell you what's wrong with me." He said, "This is not linguine." We said, "What is it?" He said, "Noodles." We had no idea that all linguine is a fancy name for what? Noodles. Unless these guys were investing in us and taking time to introduce us to cultures and cuisine that we had no clue about. And the guy we're coming to see every day is David Campbell. He's the guy that's hunched down in the front. He, for us, was a bridge. What does a bridge do? A bridge takes you from where you are to where you need to be, and that's what he did for us. That guy was taking us from shadows to sunlight, not knowing to knowing, no confidence to self-confidence. That guy saw something in us before we could see it in ourselves, assuring us we could be far more than we ever dreamed possible. That's what a mentor does. They say the greatest reward you ever receive in life, it will not be a commission, a bonus, your name on one of these buildings. It'll be the day that you make an appearance in someone else's testimonial. One of your students gets up to talk about how they were getting ready to walk out of this school and they were never coming back. They were done with it. And then, in that moment, they crossed your path. And just a few words in a simple conversation turned everything around for them. The day that happens, it's going to do it for you. As often as I tell my story, David Campbell makes an appearance in my testimonial. And now, if you were to go down on Johns Island near Charleston, South Carolina, today, in just a few hours, David Campbell will be running after-school programs on Johns Island. He's from Charleston, South Carolina. His best friend in the world is a guy we call D. Ruck. Most people know him as Darius Rucker. When he sold 13 million copies, at that time I was doing my work study at the Boys and Girls Club in college, Darius called David and said, "Hey, I need you to come on the road with me." He said, "It's a tough business. I need someone around me I can trust. I'll pay you a salary. Your feet will never hit the ground. You don't even get a chance to spend your money out here. Everything's paid for." Do you know what he said? He said no. He said, "The work I'm doing here is too valuable." I think we have, if you're coming in contact with students and any person and each other, we have a tremendous responsibility and obligation to make a difference in people's lives. I believe every day is an interview. A few years ago, I was headed, I know you guys have student support services here. I was in a program called Upward Bound. It's a TRIO program for college access students. And what they do is help first-generation college students, students whose families never been to college, helps them get to college. And I was in that program, and a few years ago, they brought me back to speak to leaders in that program from across South Carolina. They bust them into Columbia from rural areas all over our state. Most of them had never been to the capital of our state. And it was about 150 of them, and I did a presentation encouraging them that they could get to college and they could finish college. And that was on a Friday. After my presentation, they walked down and saw our State House. And then the following Tuesday morning, I'm driving down I-20 East in my car, and I'm getting ready to go speak at a high school at 7 a.m. and my phone rang. Now, I didn't recognize the number. I wasn't going to answer it. It was an 843 area code. And that's the area code of the school I was going to. I said, that's the school call. Let me get this. And I said, Brooks Harper. It wasn't the school calling. Opportunity is on the line, though. The guy said, hey, Mr. Harper, this is Carlos Cunningham. I saw you speak Friday. I need to get you over to my school to talk to my students. When can you come? How much is it going to cost us? This guy's talking my language. I got the car pulled over on the interstate. I said, Mr. Cunningham, got good news for you. I am affordable and available. When you want me to come to the school? And right up to that point in the conversation, I thought Carlos Cunningham was the principal of the high school, and he's not. He's a student at the school. I don't talk to students one-on-one. I just don't do that, especially students that are still in high school. I'm backpedaling on this kid like you wouldn't believe. I'm getting off the phone, and I said, hey, Carlos, appreciate you calling. I'll tell you what I'll do for you. I'll call your principal. We can work it out. I'll come to the school. I'm getting ready to hit the red button. And that's when he said this. He said, that's cool, Mr. Harper. He said, all I wanted to do was ask. He got me with that line. You know what I told him on Friday? In life, in order to GET, you got to ASK. In order to get, you have to ask. Hey, you want to know one of the most fundamental things you can teach your students? If they ever get into a job interview, make sure they ask for the job. If they will just ask, their percentage chance of getting the job goes up. Now I'm a man of my word. I called the principal. She transferred me to the counselor. And that's when the sad story started. See, their little school sits in a pocket of South Carolina that's called the I-95 corridor. There's been a lot of documentation done on it. In certain areas, it's really almost third world. We have a county in our state that has one general practitioner in it. And so his school is in this pocket. And she's explaining to me some of the generational issues that they face. Poverty's through the roof. Unemployment's through the roof. And what she's saying to me, code for speaker, is, we'd love to have you. We can't afford it. And then the sales presentation comes. I'm getting ready to get off the phone. She says, hey, before I let you go, can I tell you about Carlos? I said, go ahead. She said, well, he's a student body president of this school. He is the FBLA chapter president, and he cares more about his classmates than he does himself. I said, I can't let him down. She said, I didn't think you would. I remember hanging the phone up. I looked at my wife and I said, you're not going to believe this. I'm going to this school, this date, this time at my cost. And I was glad I did. When I could sense it in the town as soon as I got there. I got into school, the need was apparent. Those students sat there and listened to me as if their lives depended on it. And I gave that presentation as if they paid me 5 times my normal fee. And Carlos in the back grinning so wide he could eat a banana sideways. You know, he graduated #1 in his class, one of the first people in his family to get to college, and he got over to the University of South Carolina in Columbia, sends me a Facebook message. This is what the message said. Mr. Harper, this is Carlos. I need to speak with you. Here's my number. Now he's 18. He's in college. We can have a conversation. And the truth was, I was curious. So I called him. I said, hey, Carlos. He said, Mr. Harper, do you remember me? I said, remember you? Man, I've been talking about you across the country. I got students that asked me about you after my presentations. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, you got to meet me for lunch to find out. This guy's good, I'm telling you. On the way to the restaurant, I got this bright idea. It would be really good for my son to meet him. I swung by the middle school, checked him out of the school that day. Need Dean Harper to the front. Some people frown on stuff like that. You pull your son out of school? Like, y'all never heard of a field trip? That's what we going on, right? Hey, you guys at this community college understand it better than anyone. I believe. I think you guys are so far in advance of the way you teach that you know the classroom time is valuable, but so is life lessons match with that. Mark Twain himself said, never let formal education get in the way of learning. And life teaches lessons too. And we got some lessons at our restaurant. Lesson 1, when we got to the restaurant, guess who was already there? Had a table ready. Carlos. We're on time, but he was. That's a valuable lesson for everyone. Lesson 2, though, the most powerful, is when we ordered that food. I ordered my sandwich, my son Dean, we call him Dino. I said, Dino, get what you want. Now he's used to that. I'm telling you, this kid grows up differently financially than I did. And by the way, that's not necessarily to his advantage. And my wife and I worked very hard to reconcile that, not making it too easy for him. And I said, Carlos, I want you to get whatever you want, and you get as much of it as you want. And he ordered, and I'm not a rich man, but I'll tell you this, there was a time in my life I needed a free lunch. And that's not the case anymore. I can buy my lunch, my son's lunch, Carlos' lunch, and by the way, my son does not qualify for many of the programs that I did. And that is proof that they work, because my kids don't qualify. And so I go to hand that cashier my money, and it never made it to her hand. And here's why. Carlos eased up from behind me, put his skinny little arm around me, his kid's holding me. I'm like, he's holding me, what's he doing? And I look over at him, I said, man, you okay? He said, I'm fine. He said, put your money up. He said, I never got the chance to thank you for coming to my school, and I'm buying lunch today. And he was convincing, and I was going to argue with him, because they taught me in economics that cost and price are two different things. See, price is the same for everyone in the restaurant that day, but not cost. It will cost him more to buy lunch, but I learned this a long time ago. You never rob anyone of an opportunity to do what's right. For him to be a blessing to my son and I, and we ate one of the most humbling lunches we've ever eaten. But he gave us more than food that day. He gave us a lesson in leadership. Remember what he said to me when he called me on the interstate, Mr. Harper? I need you to come to my school to talk to my students. Hey, CTC is your school. They're your students. And when we see the place and the people as ours, it changes what you're able to accomplish. When I hit Austin Sunday night, I went down to the thrifty counter, got me a rental car. You know what I've noticed about those things? People treat them different than they treat their car. But when it's your car, it's different. When it's your people. I can tell you what about Donna. Hampton Inn is her hotel, and they're her guests. That's how she sees it, and that's how she's making a difference. My daughter, when we made the thankful list, here's what we did. We sat her down, and we got out another pen, another sheet of paper, and we said, Kate, we're going to write down everything that's good about you. Guess how many she could come up with? None. That's where Dad steps in. And we came up with a list of 25 things and put her in front of the mirror every morning and every night. And she would say those things. They say the eyes are the porthole to the soul. And we saw her, she's wearing a wig, but her confidence is going up. And it worked so well for her, we put Dino on the plan. He's a baseball player. His batting average went up because he's starting to believe that he can accomplish some things. And my daughter did that for 3 years. She wore a wig. And, oh, I had that come up. You know what, though? She took that wig off at 15. Guess what she has now? A full head of hair. It went out blonde, came in brown. We don't care. It's hair. And I know I put this photo in here because I wanted you to see something. How does a kid get from there to there? It's people making a difference. And so that's where we come in with value development. Not just investing in other people, but I think it's so important to invest in yourself first. When I get on the plane here at 5:15, I'm flying home. And here's what they're going to say, because they say this every time. If we lose cabin pressure in this plane, a mask is going to drop in the ceiling. Make sure, if you have kids, put your oxygen mask on first. And there's some people that fuss with that. And they'll spend that time trying to get their kids' mask on first and then lose the critical oxygen they need and become really in a position where they can't even help their kid. And that's where we get. Sometimes we get pretty thin, and we need moments and times like this where we can reflect, put some oxygen on, and just breathe. Let me encourage you to have that list. It's so important. I believe you ought to invest in yourself and the return in others. My daughter went for her first job interview when she had that wig. And that was a lot of pressure for both of us. Her, because she needed a job. Me, because I wrote the book on interviewing. And we tell students, and we improve it, that if a student reads the book, they got a better chance of getting a job versus one that doesn't, and we got to make sure she does well in the interview. So I sat her down, and I said, what are you going to say? What are you going to say to the manager when he tells you you don't have any work experience? Now, my daughter's sharp. She fired back at me and said, Dad, I'm going to tell him, how do you expect me to get experience if you don't give me a job? I said, that's a fair question. But I wouldn't bring that up in the interview. I said, first things first. Never let anyone focus on what you don't have. Rather, Focus them on what you do have. See, so often in life, we hone in on people's shortcomings and spend a lot of energy and effort fixing people. If we'll just focus on the things people are good at and develop and put the shine on that, there's no telling what they can do. She said, what do you mean? We come up with 3 things we think she can offer the grocery store. She went into the grocery store, filled out the application. Here was the next critical piece. She asked for the manager. So many students don't do that. They fill out the application and go out the door. That's pretty much a guarantee. They're not going to call you back. You got to have the conversation. The manager came up to her. Can I borrow you, sir? Come on up here. We'll pretend you're the grocery store manager, and if it doesn't work out here, it's America. Now, since my kids were this high, we've been practicing their handshake, and here's why. The first impression is so important, and I've learned not everyone knows how to shake hands professionally. If this is the first time you and I ever met, it would be too early in our relationship. And then some people give you the tricep rub. Have you met this person? It's so good to meet you, man. Well, we call that too casual, right? Now, some people give you the early squeeze. We call these control freaks. They don't want you to squeeze back, right? Some people give you the soft hand. Now he thinks I'm weak. Maybe he thinks I'm lazy. Some people squeeze your hand so hard you think they're trying to hurt you. Maybe I'm aggressive. Some people don't know when to what? And that can get awkward, right? If this has ever happened to you. Hey, but you know what? On a daily basis, you just take a moment, shake your student's hand. They say repetition is the best teacher. Oh, that's good, man. You have a seat. Thank you. Let's give this guy a hand. Good job. Manager comes up to her. She presents her application after a nice, firm, professional handshake. And this is what frustrates so many students, not just students, but us as professionals. So often in life, where there's an application to a college or an application to a company, they look at the reasons not to hire you before they look at your good stuff. In fact, so many resumes now are never even seen by the human eye. I mean, most of them. And so very quickly, he looked at 2 things about my daughter and decided he wasn't going to hire her. First thing he noticed, she was only 15. The deck is stacked against her. He hires 16, 17, 18-year-old high school students. Second thing he noticed, no work experience. But she's waiting on him to bring that up. And he walked right into the trap. He said, you don't have any work experience. She said, you're right, I don't. Let me tell you what I do have. She said, I have 15 years of experience telling the truth. 15 years of experience of being enthusiastic and having a winning attitude. 15 years of experience or understanding if you don't make money in this grocery store, then I'm probably not going to get paid. She said, so I'm going to work as hard as I can for you to make sure you make money, because I like to get paid. And she blew his mind, split his head down the middle. One of his eyeballs went that way and one went that way. You know why? No 15-year-old ever walked in his grocery store that prepared to present their value. And here's what we believe. Each and every student has value. Value that they can offer not only the workforce, but this school, their family, neighborhood, city, state, and beyond. But here's what we're finding. So many students can't see it. They run from achievements, and many of them don't see their own value. Now, I looked online. We got about over 21,000 students total at Central Texas College. Is that right? If we put them all in a room, in one room, and I stood before them, and I've done this to large crowds, students, and I said, how many of you consider yourself to be a salesperson? Very few hands go up. And then I rephrase it like this. Well, how many of you have ever convinced your parents to buy you something? Every hand goes up. Welcome to the sales department. Is it not true that everyone's selling something? Yep. I was in the mall with my daughter. Wow. She said, Dad, you want to go to Starbucks before lunch or after lunch? Either way, what does she get? They're geniuses at the way they phrase this stuff. It's not a matter of if we're going, it's when, before or after lunch. Either way, she's drinking coffee. She never took a course on this stuff. I remember Friday night game night. This is next level stuff. Friday night game night at her school, she wants to stay out later than we'll normally let her. Well, they don't come out and ask straight up. I came home, the house is clean. Dinner's cooked. Table's set. And she's like excessively happy. I'm like, what's wrong? She said, nothing, let me make your plate. Now I'm getting nervous. Now, how many of you, be honest with me, either your students or your own kids have ever used your own words against you to get what they want? Can I see your hands? That's made its way to Colleen, too. Well, unfortunately for this dad, my words are in writing. She's got a copy of both my books, these little signed copies I gave her, and she's read them cover to cover, notes in the margin, highlighted words, not because they're great books, which they are. She's read these books so she can use my words against me, because we're telling students in the books, hey, listen, you can't wait. You got to get out there, meet people, build relationships, network. She says, Daddy, tonight at the game, I'm getting out there. She said, I'm meeting people. I'm building relationships. She said, I'm going to put them in my network. She means her social network, but a very powerful network nonetheless. But she says, Dad, tonight, I need to stay out just a little bit later to make this happen for us. Not me, but us. And as parents, we call it manipulation, and it is. I got good news for our students. When they take their power of persuasion and connect it with character and integrity, the marketplace out there calls it sales. And it's one of the highest paying professions in the world. And the truth is, they're already experts at it, but maybe they never thought about it quite like that. And the good news is, we believe they have so much more to offer besides sales skills to the workforce and beyond. I love being in Texas because one of my heroes in the speaking business, he spent his career here in Dallas, and his name was Mr. Ziegler. And before he died 3 years ago, he told this story, and it's about Texas. He said in the early 1900s, from what I understand, this is 100% completely true, there was a guy in a town of Beaumont, Texas, that owned acres and acres and acres of land, and here was his problem. He had no cash to pay the property tax and could barely buy groceries to get ready to take the land. And he gets a knock on the door one day from an oil company. The guy answers the door. He said, can I help you? They said, sir, we think we can help you. He said, well, how can y'all possibly help me? They said, sir, we believe there's oil under the ground of your property. And if you will just let us dig for it, we'll pay you a royalty on every barrel we find. Let them knock on my door. That guy said what I would say, fellas, I got nothing to lose. I got everything to gain. You guys come on in. I'll pour the lemonade. Let's start digging, right? And that's what they did. They built a big wooden derrick back then in his backyard. They started drilling for oil. And when they hit pay dirt on this guy's property, the oil shot out of the ground, blew the derrick up into millions of pieces, and for the next 11 days, hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil poured into his backyard. And the homeowner, he was excited for a few reasons. Number one, Spindletop is the largest oil well we've ever found in America. A few oil companies came out of his backyard, and that homeowner was an instant millionaire. Or was he? You know what the truth is? He was a millionaire the day he bought the property. It was not until he dug down for that oil, discovered it, brought it to the surface, cultivated it, and then took it to the marketplace that it had true monetary value, and that's where our students are sitting. We believe they're sitting on an oil field of skill sets. What they need help with from us is discovery and development so they can put it all together and turn their passion into their paycheck. I call them 7 skills to make meals. It's not about being rich, but I can tell you students are interested enough in money to pay attention. And by the way, corporations are telling us that the students they're hiring are deficient in these areas. They call them soft skills, employability skills, behavioral competencies. I'm going to take a few minutes in the time that I have left to go through a few of these. Should we stretch just for a second? You guys need to stretch? You want me to plow through? Okay, all right, here we go. Diligence is not just hard work, though it's important. How many of you ever worked on a project and you did all the work while the other person watched? Okay? It's going to happen all of our lives. But diligent people never let someone else's lack of work ethic affect theirs. That is so critical. And teaching people to finish what they start, getting the J-O-B-D-O-N-E. So many people are good at starting but not finishing, right? And not getting your feelings hurt so easy. Anyone here ever work in a grocery store, by the way? Did you work in a grocery store ever? You did, sir? Did they get you to shake up a salad dressing your first night on the job? We used to mess people up with that. Hey, man, get down there and shake up that salad dressing. They run down there, 20 minutes, they're shaking dressing, and we're just messing with them, right? I didn't fall for that. I'm from the neighborhood. I don't fall for stuff like that. Here's how they got me. They said, you ready to go home, first night on the job? I said, yeah. They put me on aisle 1 with a mop and a mop bucket, another guy on 12 with a mop and a mop bucket, said, start mopping, you'll meet in the middle. What aisle should we meet on? 6, I'm a competitive person, man. I'm mopping like employee of the month. You know, I get over to 6, people around the corner, he's not there. I'm like, got him. And I'm industrious, I'm ambitious. I went ahead and mopped 7, he's not there. He's not on 8, 9, 10. He's up in the security room watching me on the monitor. I got thick skin though, don't worry about me. I did okay. You don't grow up in my neighborhood with red hair and not have thick skin. You think I've never been called Opie? Yeah. that situation. Number one, you always finish what you start. Number two, the grocery store manager is going to be a reference one day. Never burn a bridge, because you don't ever know when you need that relationship to get to the next step. I believe every day of our lives is like an interview. Actually, I'm here because of an interview that I did for you back in May of 2017. We were at a conference together, and Dr. Hackett saw me, and I didn't know that day that I was interviewing to be here today. But I really appreciate you having me. So we teach our students that, but also not to confuse activity with achievement. There was a study done in the 1700s by a French naturalist named John Henry Fabre, studied the processionary caterpillar. He gets his name because he always follows the caterpillar in front of it. They'll go across your yard in a single file line. The caterpillar at the front, his job is to find food. In the back, all you got to do is follow. And he took a big flower pot, and he lined the rim of the pot with caterpillar until he made a complete circle. Isn't that mean? And he filled that pot with pine needles, which is the food that they eat. And for 7 days, they marched around the rim of that pot, and on day 7, every one of them died of starvation and exhaustion. And the very food that could save their lives was inches from their body. They confused activity with achievement. Goals with plans and action, you got to have them in that order. I heard you say we struggle with GPA, knowing what that is. It stands for what? Grade, point, average. Also stands for goals, plan, and then action. I saw this play out in Atlanta airport too. Hey, you been to Atlanta? They don't park your plane beside the plane you got to get to. No. They put it on the other side of the airport. Give you 15 minutes to get over there. And they're watching us run to the airport. And I got my daughter with me. And she travels with me to some of my events now. And we get on the underground train. That thing's 4 stories underground, and it will take you from A terminal to E. When the doors open to E, you got to go up an escalator on a 4-story, it's 4 stories high, 70-degree angle. And I made this executive decision. We're out of time. We got to run up the escalator. I don't recommend that, but that's what we did. And we run up the escalator. I get to the top. I'm looking for gate E3. It's that way. Before I turn the corner, that parental voice in my head said, "Hey, man, you might want to check on her." Boy, that was good advice. Because I turned around, and I had lost my daughter in the Atlanta airport. I can't go home with that story. Honey, I'm home. Right? I married Mama Bear. She wants to know where's Baby Bear. I got to find her. And so I walk back toward the escalator. This lady comes off the escalator, and I said, "Ma'am, you were on the train with us. Have you seen my daughter?" She said, "I know exactly where she is." I said, "We don't have time for trivia." Point her to me. She said, "Sir, I'm afraid your daughter got on the wrong escalator." And about that time, I look over and notice 200 people have now gathered at the top of the down escalator. Do you know why they can't run down it? She's running up it. And I can see her head coming over the hill. She's right there, and they're all pulling for her. "You can do it. You can do it." And that was bad advice. And isn't it true that sometimes very good people give you very bad advice? And this is why I say it was bad advice, because she got to the top, and her toe slipped on the last step, and she fell. Boom. Rode all the way down. 200 people file in behind her. And I'm sitting there at the top, just shaking my head going, how in the world did I let this happen? She rides down to the bottom, stands up, gets on the up escalator, and now here she comes. And you know, you're going to have a conversation. Except I don't have time for that. You know what I heard when she got to the top? Final boarding call, gate E3, which means we got about 90 seconds, and now we have an even larger problem. She spent every ounce of energy in her little frame running up the wrong escalator. She can barely walk, much less run. And I had already seen that it wasn't gate E123. They had it set up like this, 30, 29, 28. It's a quarter mile, literally that way. I said, "Give me your bags." I grabbed her bags. I ran down there, convinced gate agent not to shut the door. She's moving through the airport at a snail's pace. Finally, we are the last people on the plane. No overhead storage. When she sat beside me, she melted into my lap like a wet noodle. I'm trying to do a couple things here, console, but also figure out what happened. And that's the first question I asked her. Why? Why did you get on the wrong escalator? Do you know what she said? Out of breath, she said, "I don't know." I think that's become a universal answer for every question now. You just say, I don't know, claim ignorance. And we don't have an answer to that question today. That was 3 years ago. I knew I wasn't getting one on the plane. I have considered writing the Atlanta airport to request the video footage from that day. I'd like to see it. But I went to question 2. Caitlin, at what point did you realize you're on the wrong escalator? She said, halfway up. And that made question 3 obvious. Why? Why did you turn back right then? She said, Daddy, I thought I could make it. And listen, that's where a lot of people are in life. Somewhere in life, they got on the wrong escalator, and they've been putting massive energy and action toward that because they confuse goals with plans. My daughter and I had the same goal, get to the plane on time. We got 2 different plans on how to get there. And when you begin to push and question students about their plans, here's what you may find. Either they don't have one, or the one they have is really not a good plan. Guy called me one time and said, Brooks, can you help me? I'm broke. And I said, well, let's start with why you broke. He said, man, I got too much debt. I said, well, we got to get you out of debt. He said, yeah, man, that's my plan. I said, show it to me. He said, what you mean? I said, well, you got a plan. I'd like to see it. He said, well, the truth is I don't have a plan. I said, and that's why you're broke, because you have confused goals with plans. And so when we talk about organization, and you start looking at 2 vital resources, their time and their money. The time they spend in your class is vital, but you know what companies want to know? What were you doing outside of the classroom when you were at CTC? Were you involved in clubs and organizations and student government, part-time job, something outside of the classroom? And then the money piece. I got to college, the first thing I did was get 2 credit cards. Why? They came with a free t-shirt. That's how shallow I was. I'm walking through campus minding my business. The guy said, would you like a free t-shirt? I had this line I used when I was a kid, if it's free, it's me. And I filled this form out. They send me a credit card. You hand a kid who grew up on free lunch wearing hand-me-down clothes a credit card, I went straight to the mall. I maxed them out on new clothes. I ate at 3 different restaurants in the food court, and I'm paying $10 a month. And they send me a letter. Mr. Harper, you're doing great. So well, we're going to increase your credit limit. You know? And I maxed them out again. And then again. And then again. I had a new slogan. Y'all take plastic? Fantastic. But it was at the risk of my family's financial future. And I would graduate with about $20,000 in credit card debt. Why does someone stay in a job so long that they don't like? A lot of times it's financial. But here's what I found. Oftentimes when they really think about it, they're not that unhappy with their job. They're unhappy with themselves, knowing that every hour they work is already promised to the person they borrowed the money from. So we're teaching them to be organized, time, money, set goals, plan, but also the action comes at the end. And then leadership, I already talked a little bit about that. Don't miss the opportunity to step up here in your school. So many people miss this piece. We're in the well. I spoke at a conference not too long ago, and I'm not going to name the state, but they brought me in early. We did a riverboat cruise the night before. People from the conference were there, and there was a first-year teacher, another first-year teacher, and someone who had been coming to conference for 25 years. And we went around the room telling them what we do. And then when they got around to me, they said, well, where do you teach here? And I said, I don't. They brought me in to speak tomorrow. You're the keynote speaker? I'm like, yeah, they brought me in the keynote. And she said, that's so wonderful. She said, that's what I want to do. They tell me I'm a great speaker. And I said, well, that's cool. I said, what time's your breakout session tomorrow? I want to come to it and hear you. Crickets. She wants to be a speaker. She has 25 years of experience coming to conference, and never in her career has filled out a breakout session and helped her other colleagues at that conference. I said, when I come back next year, I want to sit in your session. So we miss these opportunities that are around us, and that's really what leadership is. And we know we have a deficiency, especially with our students. How do I know that? I'll tell you why. Mom told her son, put the clothes in the washer to the dryer. 2 hours later, she came back and clothes were still wet. Why? He didn't turn the dryer on. Mom said, why didn't you turn the dryer on? He said, oh, that's made its way to Colleen too. We got an epidemic here. If you could teach a kid to turn the dryer on, fold them, clean the lint filter, put the clothes away, I'm telling you, that kid's going straight to the top. Learning. We teach lifelong learning. My little brother walked out of the Career Center at our high school, and when he did, this is what he said, I am never going back to school. He's an auto technician. Guess where he is every 6 months? And he loves it. You know why? He figured this out. The more I learn, the more I earn. He gets these little certificates and a little patch they sew on his sleeve. And when he gets that on there, here's what he's figured out. My value goes up, and when my value goes up, so does my dollar. People say, well, Brooks, where'd you go to school? I'll tell you. I have a bachelor's degree from the University of South Carolina. I have a master's degree from the School of Hard Knocks. Some of y'all know that program. It's the toughest in the world. I have a PhD from WSU. That's Wind Shield University. If I'm in my car, if I'm in the plane, I'm books on digital books, podcasts. I listen to people who get paid $25,000, $50,000 a keynote presentation, and I can listen to that person for free. The stuff you listen to on your ride in, your commute into the college, can make a huge impact not only in your life, but in the life of your student and the people you work with. Be a lifelong learner. And then accountability. That's the day we take full responsibility of our lives. Understanding the name is the most valuable asset they have. If you can convince a student that their name has value, then they'll do a better job of not only promoting it, but protecting it. If they were to cut their finger, would they come to you and ask you for a plastic adhesive strip? No. What would they ask for? Band-Aid. Band-Aid's name is so powerful, we think of the brand name, not the product. We don't clean our ears with cotton swabs on sticks. What do we use? I wouldn't eat anything in a bowl called gelatin, but call it Jell-O. I'm interested. The brand name is so important. I was flying out west a few years ago, and I Googled your school before I got here, just to learn a little bit about the school. And I did this for this college out west. I won't say the state. But right there on the home page, it had Student of the Month. And I had never seen a community college do a Student of the Month, a picture of her, and a nice bio. I said, this is awesome. I could not wait to Google her name to see if the article from the school would populate in Google. Now, how many of you have ever Googled your name? I know you have. It's scary. I thought I was the only Brooks Harper in the world. You know what I found out? I'm not the only one in my state. There's a guy in my state an hour and a half from me. He's crazy. He's got our name. You know how I know he's crazy? Because he popped up on mugshot.com. I want y'all to know that's not me. And we're doing search engine optimization warfare with this guy. So pushing him way down in Google so no one confuses my photo with his mugshot. And I Googled the student's name. This is beautiful. Third link on Google had her name, Student of the Month at this college. Now what that means for her, it's beautiful. When she sends in her resume, here's what's going to happen. They Google her name, and when they do, she'll already have it. Hopefully, not every student puts their achievements on here. Many students run from them. I know that sounds crazy, but it happens. And so when they Google her name, they're going to see it, but they're not going to hire her. And here's the sad part why. The second link on Google was her Twitter. You know I clicked on a Twitter. That's what the company's going to do. And it wasn't PG-13. It wasn't R. It was scary. And so I didn't even bring it up at the school. I didn't want to embarrass the school, didn't want to embarrass the student. But I wish I could find her and have that conversation with her. That her name is more valuable than that, to damage it in just a few tweets. Accountability. Character and integrity are so vital. Y'all know who Thomas Stanley is? He wrote The Millionaire Next Door. He also wrote The Millionaire Mind. And he looked at common success factors among first-time millionaires. Guess what he said number one was? Integrity. If you'll just be honest. I think it was Peter Schultz that said, hire character, train skill. I read about this guy named Zach Nash. Anybody play golf? You guys? Well, you'll appreciate this. Junior PGA tournament winner when he was 14 years old was a kid named Zach Nash. He's got the trophy on the mantle. He's in the back room cleaning his clubs. And here's what he found out. There was a club in his bag that didn't belong to him. No big deal, right? In golf it is. What had happened the week before, his buddy dropped his club accidentally into Zach's bag. Now, he never used it at the tournament. But here's the deal in golf. If you have an extra club in your bag, by rule, you have to give yourself a 2-stroke penalty. He didn't do that because he didn't know the club was in the bag. He had no idea. In ignorance, he took his scorecard, and this is what happened. When he signed his name to it, he had signed a false document. And so he knew the impact of it. Here's the deal, though. No one will ever know except him. I'm going to tell you. golf is known for its integrity among its players. He called his dad to his room, said, "Dad, I made this mistake. I need you to drive me back to the tournament." And here's what they did when he got there. He took the trophy with him. It's a very unforgiving sport. They took the trophy away from Zach, and they gave it to the guy who came in second. But here's what I'm saying. I wouldn't even know this kid's name from golf because I don't follow it that close. But I'm talking about him today because of his integrity. I saw this movie, Sully. Y'all seen that? Yeah. Where he landed the plane on the Hudson. Now, this wasn't in the movie, but I did hear this. One of the first things he did when he got on dry ground, this is after leading 151 people off that plane. Did you know he called his library? Well, why did he do that? He wanted them to know that the book he checked out the previous week was at the bottom of the Hudson, and he had promised to return it, but now would be unable to. That's integrity. And here's what I understand too. There's a plaque that hangs in that library in his honor where the book once stood. Integrity. And then relationships. We're getting close to the end here. They say in life the skills you use and the people you choose determine how far you get. I saw this play out in high school. They bring in 300 seniors. Now these seniors would potentially be coming to you the following year. They're all getting ready to start the next chapter of life. Some military, some college, some straight to work. And I'm trying to give them some encouragement. And I was telling them about a time in my life where everything was flowing. If I was on the basketball court, every shot you shoot goes in. And I told them this, and I've never said this to a student audience before. I'm just talking in my normal vernacular. I said I was like butter. I was on a roll. And I just kept talking. And I didn't realize until about 3 minutes went by that some of them didn't get it. And here's how I figured it out. 3 minutes after I said I'm like butter, I'm on a roll, a young lady on this side of the auditorium started laughing uncontrollably. I got to stop my presentation. I get over to her. I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "I get it." I said, "Get what?" She said, "Man, you like butter." I'm telling you, 3 minutes have gone by. I'm like, "You get what?" She said, "You like butter, you're on a roll." I said, "Let me guess, you're the valedictorian of this high school." She said, "No, sir." Now, if I'm talking to 300 seniors, someone is number one, and someone, unfortunately, is number 300. She said, "No, sir, I'm not number one." She said, "The truth is, I'm number 5 at this school." This is why I'm telling you the story. Because she looked right beside her and said, "She is number 1. She's 2, he's 3, she's 4, I'm 5. And they came into the auditorium like they were shot out of a cannon and sat wherever they wanted. And somehow accidentally the top 5 end up sitting beside each other? No way. I was told when I was a kid, Brooks, you become the average of the 5 people with whom you most closely associate, and there it was illustrated right there in the school. You know what they find about these top 5? It's not that they're smarter. They're all pushing each other towards excellence. And in doing that, they distance themselves from everyone else. You know the sad part? When you go in that same auditorium and you locate student number 296, 297, 298, 299, and number 300, guess where they are? They're all next to each other. 2 of them are asleep, 2 of them are clowning, and one of them doesn't even know he's in the auditorium, right? And here's the sad thing. Oftentimes, the smartest kid in that school is in the bottom 5. But the difference was the students they surrounded themselves with. They say, and by the way, they say this, that Steve Jobs is the founder of what company? Apple. But did you know he's not actually the founder? He's a co-founder. They say the guy named Steve Wozniak's way smarter than he is, but you know what? They will never meet. You know why? They're too different socially. But there's a kid named Bill Fernandez that went to Steve Jobs' school. They say he's the one that introduced Jobs to Wozniak. They say if that introduction doesn't take place, that iPhones don't exist today. Why? They both needed each other to be successful. I want you guys to know this. I speak on a lot of campuses. I speak at a lot of conferences. And here's what I've noticed. People have a tendency to huddle around only the people that they're comfortable with and miss a tremendous opportunity to meet the very person that they need to meet, either on campus or at a conference, and they won't reach out. Perhaps that person's a little different from you. Maybe I'm just comfortable here. And the very person that you need to meet at this campus that can open up your entire career for you is right here. They might as well be back in South Carolina with me. because we won't step out to do that. I hope today, before the day's over, you meet at least 1 or 2 people here new at the school. And then speaking. How many of you ever saw your student try to use a big word and use it wrong? I looked at my 9th grade English teacher. This is what I said in ignorance. I said, hey, if I know how to speak English, why do I need to take English? Do you know ignorance is the most expensive thing on the planet? There's nothing more expensive than ignorance. It can cost you your life. And people read my books. They say, hey, man, your books are easy to read. I say, I know. I don't know any big words. But that's not true. I've worked on my vocabulary pretty good. But I'll tell you what, I'm getting there. I think it's on the 7th grade level. I don't know. No, it reads pretty easy. I wrote it like I taught them. But if they can't speak, they can't sell themselves. Hey, how many of you ever sent a text message that was read out of context? Can I see your hand? What about that evil autocorrect? And you had to, oh my goodness. You sent a text. I read about this guy. This is how I found him. I Googled it because I've been married a certain amount of years. My anniversary was coming up. I was in a panic. What do you do if you've been married this many years? Like most guys, I went to Google, and I found a guy that had been married the same amount of years as me, and he lived up in Minnesota, got married in December, and he bought a plane ticket for him and his wife to go down to Florida for the honeymoon. I mean, for the anniversary. He's making it up to her. And the night before they fly out, her job calls and says, hey, you're not going to believe this. We got to have you in this meeting tomorrow. We can change your flight per company policy, can't change his, but would you please stay? She acquiesces. He flies down a day early. She goes to the meeting. He gets to the hotel, goes into the business center as soon as he gets there, and he sends her a quick email. And he got one character wrong in the email address. The email would never make it to Minnesota. I heard it came to the inbox of a little old lady in Texas on the way home from her husband's funeral. This is like a perfect storm. Well, here's what happens. She gets in the house with her son. He's putting her things up. She goes over to the computer to see if there's any correspondence regarding the death of her husband. And from the back room, he heard her scream. And then, boom, she hits the floor. He runs in. Mom's on the floor. The email would explain everything. The subject line said, I've arrived. Said, hey, listen, I know you're surprised to hear from me. They have computers here now. And you're allowed to send emails to your loved ones. He says, listen, I just got checked in, and I see that everything has been prepared for your arrival tomorrow. Says, I hope your journey is as uneventful as mine was. P.S. It sure is hot down here. Poor grandma, right? If they can't speak, they can't sell themselves. I walked across the stage when I graduated college with few thousand people. President of the university put a diploma in this hand, and he shook this one, and I'm $20,000 in debt. And I did find me an interview, though, and I am panicking on the way to that interview. I need a job bad. And I had the radio on ESPN radio. And it was my good fortune. They did a 30 for 30 story back to 1984. And when I heard that story on the radio, I had that moment in the car where the clouds part and the light comes in. I said, I'm going to use that story. I'm developing it because we teach facts tell, stories sell. And by the way, this is what the book does. Why should we hire you? It teaches students how to tell their story in the interview. If I ask you a question, hey, Keith, tell me about a time when you had too much to do. It'd be a situation where most people let something slip through the cracks, but not you. You were able to step back from that situation, organize and prioritize without letting anything slip through the cracks. Tell me the situation you were in, the action you took, and the results of your actions. And so, you know what I'm really asking, Keith? Hey, tell me a story, man. Tell me about a time when you were in college and you figured out a way to get it all done. So all interviewing is storytelling. And so I'm coming up with a story. And I get to the interview, man, I forget all about the story. Here's why. I wasn't ready for two guys to be interviewing me at the same time. And they're hammering me with questions. And I'm going to tell you about me, though. When I get hungry, I get clarity of thought. I get creative. I started doing really well. And my confidence is rising in the interview. I was like butter. I got on too much of a roll. I looked at those guys and I said, well, fellas, what do y'all think? And they took all the air out of my little redhead balloon. They didn't smile or anything. They said, here's what we think. There's a guy in here we interviewed right before you. He has everything you have. We'll either hire you or him. We'll call you in 2 days. They said, you got anything else you want to say? Well, that's like asking, why should we hire you? I remember that story. Came back to me. I said, yeah, I got something else to say. In 1984, the Portland Trail Blazers, they had the #2 pick in the NBA draft. Do you know who they picked? They didn't know. I told them. Sam Bowie. Fortunate for Chicago. They had the #3 pick that year, and the Bulls chose Michael Jordan. I said, guys, the rest is history. I said, championships, rings, and trophies. These things Chicago enjoyed because they hired the right guy. I said, but think about Portland. Portland had a chance, the opportunity, to get the greatest basketball player to ever play the game. That's when I leaned into him. Let me show you that again. Y'all know it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. I got their attention. I said, Portland let the chance to get Michael Jordan slip right through their fingers. I said, don't be Portland. I said, don't let me slip through your fingers. And I shook their hand. I closed my coat. I walked toward the door. I didn't look back because I was scared. And they called me 2 days later, and I went to work for them. And then within a year and a half, I was in management and had passed them on the organizational chart. And I'm going to tell you why. Mentality on the job. My mentality was this: as long as I work here, I'll be the first one here and the last one to leave. And many people I work with thought like this: if this is all they pay, I'm not coming in early and I'm not staying late. And by the way, that's a conversation of poverty. You always work harder than what you paid for to make an investment in your future. And one of the most important conversations you're ever going to have is a conversation you have with yourself about yourself when you're by yourself. For your students too. And you would be shocked at the conversation people have with themselves. And that's why they lack confidence in that sort of thing. Let me check my time. I got a few more minutes. I'll just press ahead. Understand your needs. What I'm going to show you next, Ken Blanchard came up with in the 70s. And I don't think people use it much anymore, but I think it's good. But you can you look at this as the life of your student throughout a year, but also the school year as you approach it, or the semester. He said there was 4 categories of people. Everybody starts out an enthusiastic beginner. By the way, a marriage is a lot like this. Enthusiastic beginner, we call that honeymoon, right? And it doesn't last too long before everyone at some point gets disillusioned and they say, what have I gotten myself into here, right? And if it's a student, by the way, this is where you can lose them. You can lose a student right here in disillusion. Did I choose the right school? Did I choose the right major? And you get frustrated. And if you're not careful, right here is where you can lose them. And in the jobs like this, too, you can turn people over right here. But if they push through it, they'll spend the rest of their time in school or in a company either as a reluctant contributor or a peak performer. The reluctant contributor says, why am I still here? I should have left a long time ago. And then you got the peak performer that says, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And based on where you are in one of these quadrants, you have needs. Your student, a new worker, new department head, you need to be given as much information as possible, assimilate, orientation, and training. When someone becomes frustrated with the whole process, this is such a vital box because they need encouragement, support, and empathy. And empathy is something we need to work on. In sales, they taught us feel, felt, found, and you can use it with a student, a co-worker, you can use it with your spouse. I've used it at the house. Yeah, feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. Now see, if you've ever been a student, then you know what it feels like to be frustrated. I understand how you feel. Many of our students have felt the same way you have, but here's what we have found. If you will stick with it, it's going to work out and be okay. And you can use that in so many scenarios, just being empathetic. Reluctant contributor. They may need some renewal, a reminder of why they got into the profession in the first place or why they came to school in the first place. This is where you can begin to redefine the why, and it may just need repurposed. And then peak performer. It needs to be recognized and rewarded. Now here's the question I want to ask you. Which box has the greater impact on the other three? This was interesting. Which box has the greater impact on the other three? How many of you say enthusiastic beginner? Can I see your hand? How many of you say the disillusioned learner? How many of you say reluctant contributor? How many say peak performer? Do you know, unfortunately, that the reluctant contributor will impact the other three in a greater capacity? Think about it. You get someone who's kind of soured in their position or wherever they are, and they get near an enthusiastic beginner, someone who's on fire and excited. You know what they say? Get out while you can. Let me tell you how it really works here. I know that's what they told you. That's not how it works, right? And think about someone who's on the ledge, the disillusioned learner. If you let the reluctant contributor near them, they'll push them right over the edge. And the people who are really performing and doing the best they can at the highest level, a reluctant contributor will suck all the energy out of them. And the reality is, at some point, we've all played that role. And I want to encourage you not to let that be the case this semester with yourself, with your coworkers, your student, and beyond. Zap stress before it strikes. Learn to let loose. When I do the longer seminars, this is where I put the music on to have you dance. Right? And then I stop the music and say, that's not what it's about. Learning to let loose is let go of the resentment and the stuff we harbor. Forgiving people before it happens. They catch the spider monkey. You know how they do it? They hollow out a coconut and they nail it to a tree, put a shiny pebble in there. Yeah, he reaches his hand in, grabs the fifth, can't get it out. Take time to breathe. Right? This watch. Every so often throughout the day, guess what it tells me to do? Breathe. But I breathe differently. I go through this 1 minute thing, and I feel better. Sometimes you just got to do that. Have an outlet. I run and strength train. My wife, we call her Miss Happy Plants. She goes out there and waters the plants, messes with them. I mean, she'll be out there for an hour. She'll go out there mad at me, come back an hour later still mad, but she feels better, right? And of course, laughter is the best medicine. And by the way, I'm sure anyone could come up right now and tell a student story. Students are hilarious. Don't forget the entertainment value. They're funny, right? Speaking of my wife and Miss Happy Plants, I did hear this about a guy who ran for mayor and won. And this is the importance of the people in your life. They threw a parade for him down Main Street in the convertible, and they're sitting there, him and his wife. And up ahead, there's a guy running a hot dog stand on Main Street. It's not just any guy. It's the guy she used to date in high school. So he's kind of feeling it a little bit, you know. He bumps her. Says, you see who that is working that hot dog stand? She said, I see. He said, well, you know what that means. If you'd have married him 20 years ago, you'd be married to a guy running a hot dog stand. She said, if I'd have married him 20 years ago, he'd be the mayor. This is how you stay connected with me. Let me encourage your students. Take a look at their email addresses, their usernames. Their username, their name is their brand. It's an opportunity for them to enhance it, not diminish it. How many of us have followers in here? All right. If this is what we teach. If you have followers, you have an obligation and responsibility of giving them something worthy of following. When you scroll through on your phone and you look at that thing, what do they call it? It's an interesting name. They call it you're checking your feeds. So whatever you put in there and out there is what you're feeding people. And I don't think we pay attention to that we're feeding people either nourishment or malnourishment. I tweeted, I want to share this with you. I tweeted, I was so impressed by Donna that I took a picture of her and the bananas. And I got this idea that if enough people went and tweeted that about her, because what she's doing is so neat and so special and unique. I stay in a lot of hotels. I've never seen anyone do this. That if enough people go and retweet that, we'll give that the recognition it deserves. And it's there at my Twitter account. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm going to be at the table. I brought a handful of books. They're $10 each, 2 for $20. The ambassadors will be helping me out. They have their square. Let me see my time. I started a little bit early. I want to be judicious with the time. Hey, we're off to a good start. I appreciate the school having me and seeing the importance and value of this. But we did teach this. That's not how we start. It's how we finish. And I don't want you guys to just finish. I want you to finish strong. So when I say finish, you say strong. Finish! Strong! Finish! Strong! Finish! Strong! I know you will. I hope I did. Thank you guys so much. You're a great audience.